And now get ready for part 2, being an entrepreneur in the coffee industry with Jim Getz and Schleif.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about acquiring customers. We talked about the target area, the pinpoint, the surrounding area, mile, and so on, and the marketing and how you hone that in. And, you know, didn't mention it, but I'm assuming social media is a part of that too. Like you said, old school, the physical touch and the coupons.
Yeah, for instance, we do have like electronic coupons. We have like an it's called our eWard system. So I mean, you sign up for it, you get like emails once a week that provide you a coupon, or like if there's things that are coming out. Like for instance, we just launched online ordering system wide, and there was a new app that was associated with it. So I mean, through all of our eWard customers, that information would go out. And
that's great.
So there's a centralized way to communicate with the customer base that have signed up for that service and stuff like that, and also to receive. Now, every store has usually their own Facebook page, and so they'll put coupons and other events and so forth like that with that. I myself even have an area developer Facebook page. It's Biggby Coffee Experiencing Indy, and so that way you can kind of, you can look for events.
So, hey everybody, like and subscribe to People Add Value Experience, and go look at your Biggby Coffee Facebook page, national or it sounds like the local area ones, local ones, and like the Facebook page. So, on the YouTube channel, like and subscribe. On the Facebook, like and do whatever else is appropriate. Follow all those fun things.
Exactly. That's right.
It helps out. So, just like with the eWorks, there's the algorithms, right? There's algorithms of social media. And same with the distribution of the emails, right? It's always important to have that feedback. And so, do you see that coming in? Do you guys? Is there like a button that you click that you can say, "Yep, this amount of coupons. Like we distribute it to 2,000 people. We receive 200 people using these coupons." Do you play with that at all? Those kind of numbers.
So, like our eWards, there's a QR code that's with them. So when you scan them, you kind of like, where did this coupon come from?
Okay.
So if you send it as a mailer, if it was like one of the standard ones we hand out the window. If we like the last week we had a $2.99 drink special for all of the Indianapolis stores, and we had a different QR. So I mean, and again, this goes back to owning our own data. We can see what coupons and what deals that are being redeemed, and that tells us, like, what does our customer base value?
Right.
And so
my favorite's free 99. I don't know if you've seen that coupon. Doesn't drive a lot of customers for sustainability. So we talked a lot about acquiring the customers, and I appreciate all that information you've provided. What about people, workers, right? How do you go about? So hey, franchisees there, but just in general, and certain markets are harder than others, not only to get them and hire good quality people, but to sustain them. So just want to touch on that first part there. How do you actually go about acquiring new personnel to work at a store?
Right. So culture. I didn't really be honest with you. The culture of that store helps feed that store. If it's happy, it's energetic, people want to be a part of that. What goes into a positive culture? You have to understand what is the market pay rate that's out there. And if you want good people, you've got to pay good people. That's just a reality. And so it's understanding that. I mean, you kind of touched upon it a little bit. Like, are you interviewing people and then are they not showing up? You didn't have to analyze, why is that happening? Like, is that person coming in for an interview and like it's just toxicity is just pouring out from that workspace? They're not going to want to be a part of that. Or if you're talking to them like, oh, this is great, but then you're offering them minimum wage, like, like, I can't, like, them not showing up is, they're providing you a feedback right there. Mm-hmm. Now you got to figure out why. And if it's consistently happening, there's probably something that's leading towards that. And so I actually came across that during like the COVID time periods, like coming out of the end of that, was I'd be interviewing people and then I wasn't getting anything back. And then I started kind of driving around and you kind of start seeing like all the window decals and
help wanted type window.
Exactly. Yeah. And they were putting dollar amounts there and you start noticing trends and you just realize, like, if I'm wanting these people to come to me, you're going to have to pay to get good people. Now, pay is a starting point. Then you have to create an environment where they want to be a part of it. And I definitely believe it's kind of like the military thing of like centralized command, decentralized execution, or empowering your people, giving them opportunities to be a part of the coffee shop.
Empowering you.
And so, and that's, I mean, whether or not you're giving small leadership responsibilities, or making them like, like there's a barista that's in charge of like social media, or there's baristas that are in charge of training. There's people who can learn how to start doing ordering. You're giving them slices of responsibility, and then also too is encouraging their feedback and hearing back from them, and they feel like their voice is being heard. And again, it goes back to culture. And so
is there like, I'm assuming there's a training program for folks that have never been a barista before or something like that?
There is, yeah. And we do. And that's when you are doing a lot of interviews, you do get certain feedback from previous experiences and stuff like that. And I know that it's kind of like a future question. Are there things you've heard that have stuck with you? And so Mike McFall, one of the co-CEOs of Biggby Coffee, he said it right. No one comes the first day of work and goes, I want to suck. They don't start that way, or
vacuum salesman,
and so, but like when someone starts a job, they're excited, and so what's causing that excitement to drop away, and I mean, sometimes it could just be like boredom and they just want to try something different. Okay. But there could be other things that are leading towards that. And so training is one of them. And so do you have a consistent training program? Are you putting them in situations where they can succeed? Do you have materials that are there for them to help them to succeed? If they're not doing sales tactics, are you creating an environment where they're receptive to hear that information? Again, it's just as simple as like, when you're brand new and you got like this register and you're just trying to figure out like
all the buttons,
what's a butter bear, and stuff like that. And like, why do you keep getting on me? Like, why I can't remember to ask them if they want an extra shot of espresso because I can't remember where the button is to put in the original drink, So is learning, like, what are you asking of them? And like, how are you helping them along in their journey? And so then like I realized that. So now we have a cheat sheet that's on the side of the register that says, beverage upsell, food upsell, Biggby card. And so it's something they don't have to think about. They can just say, oh, did I ask that? And so then you're starting to create a habit. And
isn't it? I mean, that's huge for everybody, right? I mean, because there's what was the book? The Checklist Manifesto. Yeah. And they dug into they went to a hospital, they did a study. Why are there so many people either passing away or getting infections? Yeah. And they found out they were so busy that doctors were going surgery to surgery and forgetting to wash their hands. Yeah. So they were contaminating these patients. And so it was like a 5-step checklist or something. I mean, super small. Hey, did you take off your gloves? Did you wash your hands? Did you put them back on? Like not your hands, but put the gloves back on. Something like that. So having that cheat sheet, and I mean, through some various studies of Lean and Six Sigma and some of those things, like just some really small, streamlining, efficient steps to jog your memory, especially when you get busy, is extremely helpful. So you're able to, so you've done some research over time and you found out through trials and tribulations, I can get some people in. I'm assuming you've done some either like ads or like, again, social media, like, hey, we're opening this store, apply now, and or physically, you have the signs. Then you get them in and you've noticed over time that I'm assuming it's been refined and or the culture of the shop, ask certain questions, experience some of the generic ones, but I'm assuming every shop will have its own culture or flavor of questions, maybe more specific to them and or the franchise owner. So then they come in and now you've helped train them. It's sustained training. Therefore, it's not like something so crazy that it's not consistent where if I ask, Bob number 2 and Bob number 1's like, oh, I don't know, I've never learned that. They all learn the same thing so they can help each other out and rotate. Yeah. So they go through that experience. The culture is part of the sustainment, but what else? Like, how do you sustain loyalty and folks staying with stores and continuing to work for Biggby?
Well, and something else I kind of want to just further develop the concept we were kind of talking about before, and this kind of goes back into entrepreneurship. The individual gets into business themselves. They have to have very strong convictions upon their decision-making process. I mean, that's one of also the reasons why you get into business, is because you are hedging your life, and also even like your family's life, on your abilities. You're betting on yourself, which means you have to have a bit of a confidence, and also a bit of stubbornness, but confidence in your decision-making abilities. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to ask yourself, am I getting in the way of my own success? And there has to be a relative self-reflection that goes along with that. Because it's counterintuitive, because the moment you start to question yourself and your effectiveness, then all of a sudden now you're second guessing every decision, and then you feel like you're becoming like a less effective entrepreneur, which then can lead into your business. But there needs to be a healthy self-reflection. And what I'm kind of getting at is when it comes like to culture, it comes into crew and stuff like that. You have to ask yourself, and I honestly, like when I do listen to like business people, like, workers aren't what they used to be, and blah blah blah. There's all these excuses as to the reason why, like their sales are down, or they can't keep people and stuff like that. Like, I always want to say, I guarantee you, back in the Roman times, Maximus didn't break rocks like Claudius used to back in the day. I mean, like every generation thinks they are the hardest working generation, and the next one's the laziest. And sometimes I want to like shake that entrepreneur and say, have you looked at yourself? Are you the reason why? Are you the one that's kind of getting in the way? And I'll be honest with you, I had to have a moment with myself. It's like, I wasn't giving the tools for people to be successful. I wasn't giving proper feedback for people to be successful. I wasn't giving clear enough direction and guidance and vision and goals to be successful. And I feel like it's important for an entrepreneur to do that self-reflection. Are there things I myself that can do better? Mm-hmm. And I feel like those are the businesses that do grow, and is someone having that capability to do. It's tough to do, and to self-reflect on, and really, and it kind of goes back to the labor part of it. Is I had to start peeling away responsibilities for myself and empowering other people, and by doing that, I was creating an environment which was more positive and healthier. But also, too, is that when someone feels associated with a business, or they've got a role and responsibility, or something where they feel challenged, they want to stay and they want to grow. And it's my job as an entrepreneur to kind of to continuously create more opportunities.
Right. There's a really good book that I was listening to, almost done with it. It's called Mindsets by Dr. Carol Dweck, and she talks about growth mindset and fixed mindset. And, there's some psychology behind that as far as like the self-reflection and self-awareness. And that's more of a top tier. So there's the personality of, I want to evolve and grow as a person. And then the self-reflection is part of that from the root, if you will, is you really do have to look at yourself. And like you said, whether that's a business and somebody get in the way, or is my personality conflicting with either my other franchise owner, my area developer, and or my fellow workers. Right. So that's a big deal. I think it's interesting that, so I had to write a paper for one of my class. I know, not formal education, but it brought to light a lot of things I already realized is, when I used to do the professional speaking in the military, talking about different personalities and also different generations. Yeah. And again, this paper brought out a little bit more and looking at what was important. There was the radio generation. There was the silent generation. There was the traditional generation. Some people experienced World War II. Some people, there was the economy booms and depressions and all these things. And then now you have technology and things are instantaneous at your hands, where you had to, use the Dewey Decimal System back in the day to go to the library. And took forever to do research, and, and you had the set of Britannica, encyclopedia. And now it's like, I can just do whatever on the phone. And now it's not only like localized, it's nationally. I can get world news in 2 seconds, or not even 2 seconds, on my phone. Yeah. And that's different. And you have to realize that. You have to realize people are used to having this information instantaneously. They're used to, like you said, even more clear and concise, different words, different phraseology. I mean, even from state to state, that changes, like slang, all of those things, like all that has to be taken into account. And again, that's why I think, living overseas, you see that, right. And distinctly, but I think that's extremely important. So that's a great point of being successful, is looking at yourself, looking across the board holistically of the different generations, and or that demographic you're in, because we used to look at subculture. So not only like, hey, here's the generation, but then the subculture. So if I'm in this age group, but then I grew up here, I've experienced different things. What does that bring to the table when I go to apply for a job?
Right.
And again, and I want them to stay there. How do I do that? I'm sure there's more. If I work in a pizza shop up in New York, New York City specifically, there's a little bit more brashness that's accepted there compared to a small town in Texas or Florida, right? Completely different dialect, everything. So I think that's huge. So you touched on the culture as far as huge loyalty, the person themselves looking at it themselves from the franchisee standpoint and or even manager standpoint, right? And making sure that you're sharing that. And then taking the feedback. So that's the part hey, I'm looking at it, but like the feedback from them and not taking it personal, but taking it professional.
Right.
That feedback loop of saying, okay, hold on a second. Maybe they're right. Maybe I do need to change. Like, again, either I grew up that way and I was doing it this way, or maybe I need to like modify this training a little bit because the people around here are used to X, Y, and Z, and these other people were used to W and A, right? Completely different.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. I was going to ask a question about how do you keep morale high, but it sounds like that's literally just part of the culture and just keeping it revved up. Is there anything else that Biggby Coffee does? Like the company I work for has, Christmas, gatherings, parties, if you will, and those kind of things.
So they do. I mean, we have like once a year, we have like our conference. Our employees call it Biggby Palooza. That's
awesome.
But it's Biggby Nation Summit is more official term of it is, and so it's where franchisees and managers, like it's like a 2 to 3 day event, and so some days it's just for franchisees, some days it can be for local baristas and managers that kind of come in. It's an opportunity to kind of interact with other people, like in your own peers, kind of get some lessons learned that way. They have like local events. We just had one where it's like kind of like a Biggby Batch. It's kind of like how to explain it. It's just a fun skills-based event where, again, locally, like for instance, it was in central and northern Indiana, so all the stores from there, they kind of got together and they kind of created an opportunity to kind of do it's just have fun, but then also to do some learning some skills and being able to show off skills. I also,
do you guys do like the bartender, like you flip the cup? It's like, well, there's like hot coffee getting everywhere.
Like there's things like latte art competitions.
Oh yeah.
And so you can do etching or foam stretching and stuff like that.
Foam stretching.
So I mean, when you froth, you said you've got yourself a very fancy espresso machine now, and you could stretch the milk. You make some foam in there. If you when you're pouring that milk into the drink at the end, you can kind of do designs with it and so forth. And so you'll have to get to that level.
Oh no, I mean, trust me, I'm not there. I haven't gone to places. I'm like, oh, they made a clover, or they've made like the
heart and
the leaf.
Like that,
it looks like a leaf.
I was really good at making watermelons, round balls, circles. Basically, I was really good at circles.
Yeah, here's the blob. Can't you tell? It's the blob. It looks just like the blob.
Yeah. There's that, and like something else that I do, like I empower my manager this way, because I mean I have meetings every week with my manager. We kind of discuss like how are things going, and again, she's in the shop all the time. So if there's things that are coming up, we can kind of discuss and get ahead of it. But also too is empowering them. Where I say, look, I'm giving you a budget, $50 a month. If someone like had a tough day, like you don't have to ask for permission. Like this is go out and get them a card and maybe like a $10 Amazon gift card, or it's we're gonna have a long day. Like you can pick up some cookies and people can kind of share that. I mean, like small little gifts and stuff like that, or just appreciations of just saying, hey, you know what, you did a great job today. That is learning to stay away from the but statements. Just giving a compliment without any other follow-up.
I gotcha.
Any
kind of caveats.
Yeah, and so I mean, it's a bunch of little things, that can lead to morale. And so like big events and small events, and
that's great.
And just recognizing good.
Yeah. So you mentioned it earlier, and one of the big questions I like to ask for people that have participated in entrepreneurship and or just business in general through the COVID period, right? So I know a lot of people had lessons learned there. They had to do some large pivoting. For the company, the coffee and or Biggby company perspective, how did y'all approach COVID with people not being able to physically get to the stores? You know, I mean, I'm sure there was some, right? First responders also need a lot of caffeine. So I'm sure had a ton of people coming through. But how did you guys approach that?
I still remember. So I Air Force Reserves, and COVID really starting up when I was actually doing my reservist duty, and I actually almost had to get permission that I could leave. I remember it was like March 12th is when I left the Scott Air Force Base, and March 16th the governor shut everything down.
Wow.
And so I mean it was a scary moment, and I remember Mike McFall and Bob Fish, they were having like daily teleconferences with like the franchisees, and by this time period we were celebrating our 25th birthday within the company itself. I mean I wouldn't say it's been around forever, but like it's a longer time, and like they were there from the beginning, and I could see fear in their eyes. I mean, and why? And I called them up and I said, you know what, Mike, I appreciate. Well, first off, that's the other thing too, is that his cell phone is readily available to us that we can call him. I've accidentally pocket dialed him one time, and and I got a phone call 20 minutes later saying, "Hey Jim, what's up?" You know, and stuff like that. And I mean, it's an over $100 million company.
That's awesome.
And but anyways, I called him up and I said, I appreciate the fact that after 25 years, there's still fear in your eyes that everything that you created could just disappear. You know, like he cares, you know? And so at a point where he doesn't, like, he's made his money, he's created a legacy that he could say I'm proud of, but yet he's not done, you know, and stuff like that. And so, and when I get to that, I mean, it kind of goes back to the smaller level, but even when it comes to like bigger instances, it's that passion and it's that drive and the I care factor. And so I remember it was hard to find sanitizer. It was hard to find masks.
Oh, man.
The home office was trying to work with our distributors to secure that stuff. Okay. You know, like getting procedures down, and like, I mean, it was different in Michigan. It was different in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio.
Oh, man.
I mean, like,
that's right.
And so like, they're trying to give us guidance. I mean, and you're trying to like work through a landmine that you've never gone through, and you're trying not to make any mistakes. And so, communication was huge. I remember when it happened on the 16th, I brought the store everyone in, and I was very clear. I said, look, I'm no longer working the line. If I'm working the line, then I'm taking away $1 from you. And high school kids, you'll probably get 1 or 2 shifts, but we have people who have to pay mortgage, childcare. There's expense. They have priority. And like I said, look, I need every one of you. Like, this isn't going to last forever. I'm going to need every one of you. We're all going to kind of like, we're going to have to be more efficient. We're going to have to be more lean. But we're going to get through this. And so, so messaging, creating a solid plan, having solid back of the house support, so that people feel safe and comfortable as well also too.
So did you have to so no one, I'm assuming, could enter, but you could keep the drive-through going?
That's correct. Yeah. And so, and we had protocols that we took serious, and like if we were going to do something, it was anonymous feedback, and if one person wasn't comfortable with it, I mean, we could have had 20 employees and 19 were good with, but one person wasn't, and it was all anonymous. If there was one person that wasn't, and we always stuck with like guidelines, but like but we would not do something more unless everyone felt comfortable with it.
Right.
Baseline is health department, you know, stuff like that. And and it was important because we wanted to make sure that people felt safe and comfortable coming into work. Because you had that element, like it was weird. It was, we were fortunate that because we were one of the entities that were considered mission essential. So,
I told you.
Yeah.
Caffeine and first responders is a serious deal.
It's real. And so, it was weird. Like, so we had shrunk our hours down. And so like, I mean, how should I say that? Our labor hours down because we knew that there was going to be less demand because everyone was home. But then all of a sudden we had Like we were doing like 40, 50, 60% sales gains, you know? And so then now we're in an environment where you need people,
Right.
you know? And so
Wait, did you have to hire during COVID?
we had to hire during COVID.
Wow.
Wow. And so that was challenging in itself. And it started off with having again, it goes back to strong culture and a work environment where people felt heard and safe. And we never reduced our hours. We stayed open from 5:30 in the morning to 9 p.m. every day. So we weren't playing that game all over the place and stuff like that. So we were reliable. And I think that helped out a lot. And part of the sales gains that we had, this kind of goes back to knowing who you are, what your strengths are. During that time period, I mean, like Starbucks were getting overrun. I mean, it was like ludicrous, the lines that were there. And people were going on the local chatter going, why are you guys spending 30, 40 minutes in the Starbucks line? Biggby Coffee, guys, it's locally owned. He supports the community, and they've got great drinks, and their prices are reasonable and stuff like that. And I mean, like, this was not me doing it. This was like our customers out there going into the chatter out and speaking for us.
That's great.
And so people go, oh, well, you just got lucky during COVID. It's like, no, it was a lot of, I mean, yes, but then also too, it was a lot of pre-work and commitment to the ideals and the foundation of the company that led to our success.
So they're more like, they're loyal to the ideology along with the good product, but because of that culture, that ideology, and again, the culture, they attach to that.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's interesting because, one of the guys that owns a local restaurant here will be coming on at some point, and we'll do a session. And he stayed open through COVID, and he was very transparent with his workers. He's like, hey, and I'll let him go more definitively into it. But a lot of them came back that if they had to leave again to draw unemployment just due to the nature of what was going on. Again, touristy, while there are locals that support, when you have a lot of your base revenue base off of seasonal tourists and they're gone, that's huge. And I mean, still running and doing extremely successful today. And because because I knew, right, it was important. I felt like as a consumer, it was important for my local businesses to support them. So I would go buy stuff and bring it home or whatever on the way home from work, essential worker at the time. Anyways, so being able to do that was a big deal. So that's crazy. To know that you went up, I think and you weren't selling sanitizer. So that's like, right? So, what a benefit. That's a big deal. I mean, I'm really glad that you guys not only were able to sustain, but then actually grew during that period. That's wicked. So now that we're sort of culminated the company standpoint, right? That pretty much all the way from birth to its current sustainment as a teenager, right? Yeah. And it's interesting because Asian cultures, they'll have like 100-year plan. I don't know if you know that from a strategic standpoint. Like I've studied some of them, just different mindset. Like here it's like, maybe 10, 20 years out, they have like 100. But I'm like, how do you take quantum computing into your 100-year plan? But that's a whole other ball of wax, different discussion. So I really, just in general, we talked a lot because I wanted to hit some lessons learned, but I think we hit it through a lot of the conversation and topics that we discussed here. But I really wanted to sort of wrap this up and talk a little bit about life lessons, right? So from a personal and professional standpoint, one of those questions you semi-answered earlier, and we'll just reiterate that from a professional standpoint. So what was a valuable conversation that you've had or listened to or been a part of that has stuck with you professionally? Again, you can reiterate or, draw down a little bit more on the one you had earlier, or if there was a different conversation.
So, I mean, there isn't like one or two. I mean, I've learned that when successful people start talking, I shut up and I listen. And I always grab little nuggets here and little nuggets there. And then I try to incorporate it into my style and so forth. Like I mentioned before, Mike McFall saying that like when you hire somebody, they don't start, the first day going, I want to suck at my job. Like something, if you have a person with dropping productivity or morale, there's something causing it. And so then if it's happening more often, then you need to really take a deep dive in what's causing it. And then look, how can you solve it?
Assess the variables out there, right?
Exactly.
Narrow it down.
That's it. And so another things that I learned, Bob Fish, I remember it was more specifically towards like Biggby Coffee. When I had first started off in Biggby Coffee, I wasn't a strong believer in coupons. I thought, okay, you're devaluing the brand. Why pay full price if I get this coupon in your hand and stuff like that? But I was listening to him, and it was this. He referred to it, if I could do anything, I wish I could turn the word discounting into promotion, because that's what it is. I mean, what you are doing, you're not devaluing the brand, you're growing the brand. And he was right. And like, it was to me as a business owner, and the idea of trying to grow my business, it was mind blowing, because it was completely backwards from what my initial thoughts were. I mean, when I talk to like prospective franchisees or even current franchisees, it's trying to get that mindset to change. And the power of the discount, it's based on trying to get repeat customers, but also too is to reduce that barrier of entry. We have a great product and we have great customer service, but if you never cross that door, you're never going to experience it.
Right.
And so that was something just at business wise, is just understanding the power that's associated with couponing / discounting and promotion.
That's huge.
And I feel like a lot of times people are afraid, like that's the first thing that they're going to want to cut or stop. It's like, oh, my discount rate's too high, I need to get that down low. It's like, you don't want it to be ludicrous. You need to understand, and this kind of goes back to understanding your market and understanding your customer. But that shouldn't be the first place you're looking at, of trying to reduce costs, because that is your growth generator, is your customer base. And the other thing is kind of going back to that was empirically, and this was the difference between a Champaign market and the Indianapolis market, is that when I opened soft in Champaign. I said, okay, we'll grow. And when I opened in Indianapolis, I opened up with a big bang. I made a big deal out of it. I was giving away all the stuff. And like, our customer base was here, and then it went down, and then it went back up. And in places where I started off slow, it did grow, but those lines never intercrossed. And there's some value added on creating marketing buzz. And I've had franchisees that say, oh, I just want to do a soft open and then we'll do a grand opening later. And I was like, no, you only get one grand opening, and you need to make that all about getting people through that door.
You could do grand and then super grand.
I know. Super duper.
And then you have super duper grand opening.
Exactly. Yeah. But again, it's a mentality, and it takes some strength and courage to, like, you just got done dropping a good amount of money, and now you want me to give product away for either free or super discounted. And the biggest thing with business, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And you have to think strategically, and your efforts here are going to pay off here. It's kind of like the COVID thing, where my success is because all the efforts that I led up to that point created a moment that I was able to be successful. It's kind of like you create your own luck type thing.
I'm a big fan, and I've heard it multiple times in multiple different situations and scenarios and context, is think if you can change, and this is hard for American culture in general, is if you can think chess, not checkers.
Right.
Because we're very driven as a culture to think in the checker, boom, instant rate, boom, one move, two moves. But like, you think chess and you're thinking 20, 30 moves ahead, that is a big deal, right? Like, you can't see just right here. You need right in front of you, 3 feet, 2 feet in front of you. You have to see that 50-foot target, 250, whatever, right? Like way far away. So I think that's extremely valuable for a lot of people to hear and understand, is that big boom up front can pay dividends a little later on. And I like that, again, if you're just listening, he did sort of a U loop here with his hand, but the big bang starts off the top, goes down a little bit, and then that curve reapproaches the top.
Right.
And then, like you said, that organic growth started off, and it was almost more of an angle, right? Like a 45-degree just growth in that instance. So, I mean, that's huge. I didn't know that. I think that's really important for a lot of people to hear.
And again, it goes back to the power of franchising and owning your own data, is that, again, you have numbers to show this. And it was kind of a phrase that I kind of live by, is that figures never lie and liars always figure. Numbers tell you a story.
Do you need to copyright that? Is that out there?
What's that?
Do we need to copyright that? That'll be on the shirt. It'll be Biggby, and then it'll be like Jim, and then on the bottom it'll be like the quote.
But it's but I mean, numbers tell a story. You got to understand those numbers, but numbers do tell a story, and again, that's the power of a franchise and owning your own data, is you have that ability. And because I get asked sometimes, like, why didn't you ever do like Jim's coffee shop instead of Biggby? And the reason being is that, like, I don't need to invent the wheel. The wheel's been invented. And so, and people say, well, you pay a royalty, you're just giving away a portion. It's like, having your own entity, you're paying a royalty. It's called opportunity cost. Because like, I'm having to figure out the menu. I'm having to figure out logistical stuff. I'm having to figure out all those back of the house things. And I'm forgetting the most important part of the business, and that's the front of the house. That's the operational part. That's interactions with the community. It's interactions with the customers. And franchise, like the Biggby Coffee franchise and the systems that have been around for a while, like the wheel's been invented. Here you go. Here's the wheel. Now drive it the best you possibly can. And focus on the operational part, focus on the customers. And I had to, again, it's kind of a little bit of an ego check. It's kind of like franchising an entrepreneur. I had to have a realization that sometimes I'm not as smart as I think I am, and I need to listen to other people who are just as smart and incorporate that. And
right.
And
some of us that have known you a long time realize that a long time ago.
Well, yeah, I had to go on my own journey, and stuff like that. But again, it kind of also goes like with one of the roles and like the passions that I do have, like as an area developer, is, and I said entrepreneurship, is that I want to help people who have that fire to be successful. And whether I sell toilet paper or whether, like, it doesn't matter. Like, Biggby Coffee is the median to get to that point of why you want to be an entrepreneur. And there's usually different reasons for it. And I mean, and I start with people saying, you're going to own a job, and I want to get you to owning a business. And there's a book like E-Myth. It's great on that. It's like you have people who say, I want to start a bakery because I love to cook. Well, if you love to cook, go work for somebody and cook. Otherwise, if you want to own a bakery, then you need to be teaching other people how to cook. So that way you can then have the freedom to do what you want to do.
Right.
That's entrepreneur, is having the freedom to be able to do what you want to do. Biggby Coffee is a mechanism and proven systems that are out there to be able to do that for somebody. And so, like, whenever I'm talking in the perspective, I had to kind of learn that. It's like, okay, why are we here? And now us as a mechanism, we can get you there.
Right.
And
that's important. I mean, that's important. I like your analogy with the I think of the wheel and the car, a driver compared to like, hey, I just like cars, compared to a driver that you want to get in. You're going to take care of the car. You got to do all these other things. You're going to have to teach your kids how to change the wheels of the tire. Like there's a lot more that goes into that. So that was a lot of the professional side of the house. Have you learned anything from the gym perspective, the personal perspective? Has there been a conversation in your life that's something that has stuck with you outside the professional side, something more personal that makes Jim who he is today? Well,
Jim's a complex person as I speak with him in the third person.
Flower with many petals.
Exactly. Like Shrek, I'm an onion.
Right. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, man. It's really, be honest with you, all the good things that have happened, all the blessings, all the failures that I have had. I've always stated I am who I am because of all the good and bad things that have happened to me. And again, it's just like our conversations that we'll have, like philosophically under, whatever kind of beverage that we have decided going on and stuff like that. I mean, just kind of talking about those. It's just being open to listening. And
so would you say you don't have necessarily like you said, a single conversation that you've gathered value in your personal life from? It's been multiple. Are there any that, I don't know, top 3 or anything?
I know. And I was kind of hoping to ramble a little bit.
To think about it a little bit.
To pop in. But it's just, I don't know. It's small things. It's having that desire for improving, just self-improvement. You see other people reach goals and you're like, okay, how are they reaching that? And as opposed to just being someone who's just kind of aimlessly out there, And so and I know you're looking for a specific
no, that's okay.
thing.
No,
but
no.
I'll be honest with you, it's I mean, as corny as it sounds, it's just a culmination of just life and just reflecting on it.
Sure.
And makes you to where you are. And and seeing back to like when I said I had stores that worked well and stores that didn't work well, why did this not work and why did this work? And then starting to make, like, you want to create goals, and then, I guess actually this is one of the things is knowing where you want to go. So that way all your actions that you do in life get you to that point. And I know that sounds very simple, but I think there's a lot of people out there that just live their life without direction. Or they don't understand where they want to go.
So it's funny you say that, right? Because one of the things that I think, two things. One is sense of purpose, right? Sense of purpose is like, do I have ownership and value in my job? Or is my sense of purpose, I go for a paycheck to support other things? That's where my sense of purpose is, whether that's a hobby, my family, whatever else. Yeah. And, being that we're at work all the time, there's quite a bit of people that at least sustain or are loyal to a job for a while. I need a sense of purpose. I need to feel like I'm part of something bigger than I am. Right. Other folks, and that's okay, right? They find that in their family, not to say that there's not both, by the way, but they find that, hey, I don't really care about that as much. I do need to draw a paycheck to do whatever it is. Maybe I have car hobbies that, like, this provides the finances for car hobbies. I don't mind going in. I'm going to do really good at my job. But, here or there, whatever, I'm okay with that. Yeah. The other thing is that you've continuously said is, over time, there's a lot of period of buildup. And that always goes back in my mind to what Malcolm Gladwell talked about in Outliers, which was a scientific study, if you will, that he's very like, he provides a theory and then some of the background. And of course, people always come out and rebuke whatever, but there was the 10,000 hours, right? Yeah. Like really working hard at doing something. And that comes with the experience. Like you just said, is over time, there's these little nuggets you learn along the way that, yeah, it's hard, right? On the spot, or even if you've read it beforehand to go, oh gosh. But as it comes about in the environment, you're like, oh, I remember that. That's what drove me to do these actions because of this conversation way back then. But if you're not in the environment or context, it's sort of hard to remember off the cuff, if you will, or top of your head. So yeah. I do appreciate that. I think that's a big deal there. So, okay, I think we're arriving here towards the end of the conversation. So I want to,
I did. Sorry, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Too is that is the concept of life balance. And
big.
And that's, and to be honest with you too, even when you come back to the workforce environment, is your employees as well have a stronger feeling towards life balance and the concept of that. And that's one of the things as an entrepreneur, sometimes you have difficulty with, because you can be very obsessive and you can be very pour everything into it and stuff like that. And you do have to give things the work it deserves. But I remember when I was stationed in Spangdahlem, I had a commander, and he was very career orientated. And his kids had kind of grown. And we had talked a little bit about rugby and how he used to play lacrosse and stuff like that. And you can just kind of tell every once in a while, he was kind of like always reflecting on his life yonder and stuff like that. But he was very focused on his career. He went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you have leukemia. You're probably going to be dead in 3 years.
Wow.
And so then all of a sudden you do all this reflection of everything that you gave up to maximize your career. And then, it's that one of those moments you have, like, did I live the best life that I could, and so I can be very work driven, and I have to consciously work on that element right there of recognizing life balance.
Yeah. You pick up when I call, so that's nice.
That's right.
You're like, hey, I'm elbows deep in espresso beans. Can I give you a call back? But at least you pick up the phone, right?
Well, and I try to call you sometimes too.
Now listen, we don't need to stretch the truth that much here, Jim, too. We all have those people, right? Like I tend to be the person that reaches out, and that's okay. We're all different. So I have the final question to ask you. You're ready for the final question?
I'm ready, yes.
Okay.
A little scared.
So it's pull your blankie on. No. So how many in your life, how many beds have you slept in?
Man, I moved 12 times growing up. Really, it wasn't until I was 44 that I had no idea how long I was going to live someplace. So, man, I'm probably saying that between like college and military and
Rugby tournaments.
Now, does that have to be beds? Can it be sleeping bags? Can it be?
So here's the fun part about the question is, the question is not really looking at a numerical answer.
Yeah.
The question is the journey that your mind takes.
Yeah.
So you start going in your head, and everyone's approached it differently. I'm like, my cousin in the last session was like, "Oh, wait, is it just by myself?" And I'm like, "Oh, geez, buddy, you know, like,
yeah."
So like
family program.
Right? Yes, this is family. I don't want to mark explicit on it. So the big deal about that is like you start to reflect where I came from. As a kid, I slept in this bed.
Yeah.
And then I moved and I slept in this bed. Or I went over to a friend's house and I slept in this bed for a sleepover. Or I went camping and I slept here. Or I went hiking and slept here. And then, like you said, being in the military, I mean, especially deploying, you're sleeping in cots, you're sleeping on bunks, you're sleeping. And not only where you get to, but also transiting, right? You remember the transit tents. Yeah. Anyway, so like those different places. And so it's this cumulative like thought process. And I just like to ask people, because I think it's a really cool thing to see their mind journey and just that iteration of life.
Yeah. Oh man. And just so many places in Europe that I traveled to. I mean, just when I went on the 2-week vacation in Italy, I mean, that's probably like 20 right there, you know, stuff like that. It's it was anyways. Yeah. Impossible to answer your question.
Well, impossible is a pretty big. I mean, I think if we like, made some tack marks, we could figure it all out. But no, I just appreciate you trying to, just going on that journey with me and looking at that. Because I always think, I mean, good Lord, just depending on some of the people, it could probably be thousands, maybe even tens of thousands. I mean, if you think about people that have travel as part of their job, like a musician or a roadie or maybe a sales agent, all the hotels they have to go to, and if they moved as a kid and or a military, I mean, there's you could easily get to that. I mean, I'm pretty sure it would be for most people in the hundreds.
Yeah.
I can't say that, right? It just depends. It all depends. But like I said, what did you think? Like, how did your mind start working when I asked you that question?
At first, I was say like, I was gonna be like, well, man, it's probably like 30 or 40, and I was like, no. And then then you start saying travels, and then there's times I've gone, like even when I was in college, and like I was driving from Penn State to Springfield, Illinois. My bed was in the car sometimes because I couldn't stay awake and everything like that. And so when I was over in Germany and I was traveling all over the place, and then I just started trying to focus, and I was like, this is impossible. My mind was starting to explode.
Ameland, remember the tents in Ameland slept in? And all of those different places. Yeah. Some of our rugby friends were nice enough to host us in certain their apartments and their houses. But so, I just wanted to wrap it up. I wanted to thank you, Jim, for coming on People Add Value Experience. I had a great time. I've learned a lot from you. I appreciate Biggby Coffee for allowing you to come and talk at length and at detail, and providing some detail for the consumers and the potential franchisees out there, and just learning a lot more about that. So again, just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you as well.
All right. Well, and that ends the episode, and hope everyone enjoyed.
Great.
All right.